This is the Mind and Muscle Podcast, where we focus on going beneath the surface to understand more about why we desire to achieve the physique-related goals that we do, and provide you with tools beyond exercise regimens and diets to help you achieve those goals. Today, I am here with my guest, Shelby Sceavers, who is an IFBB Pro women's wellness competitor in the sport of bodybuilding. How are you, Shelby?
Oh, pretty good.
Thanks for coming on today. So tell us a little bit about your background. You started competing in 2016, and you came in and we started working together in 2018, so it's been about 7 years now. So tell us a little bit about how you got into competing and what motivated you to start competing.
Well, I originally got into bodybuilding after having two of my kids. I went to a friend's show and I seen them announcing all of these mothers on stage, like mother of two, mother of three. And I literally had just had my son. He was only like a couple months old. So I was still, recovering from all of that. And I was like, I can't believe that you can have a body like that after having children. And that kind of just really inspired me. And I think a couple months later, I signed up for my first show, and the rest is just kind of history.
So how long was that time frame initially when you had your son to getting on stage for the first time?
I think he was, I think he was like one-ish or so when I stepped on stage for the first time, so he was pretty young.
So you did that pretty quick then?
Yeah, oh yeah. And I did just like a really quick 14-week prep, just kind of jumped in, didn't know anything about it, made a lot of mistakes going through it, but enjoyed the process.
And obviously you kept going with it. And with that, you did your second show, and you competed in the bikini division, and this was before the wellness division came about. What was your experience competing in bikini?
I enjoyed bikini because it wasn't at the time like a super muscular look. Like I said, I did a 14-week prep and was able to kind of like jump in and do fairly well. And so I kind of enjoyed that aspect. It was good like stepping point for me going into the sport. I struggled a lot with the shape of my body. I constantly got told that my legs were too big, my butt was too big, like just the shape of where I was at. I needed to lean out in certain areas, and that genetically just was not possible for me, so I couldn't get past fourth place for the life of me.
And I remember that early on, we did several bikini preps together, and those ended in frustration for you, as you were always conditioned, but you just couldn't get past that fourth and fifth place spot. And with that, how much frustration was setting in at that point before you heard about, before wellness came about?
I actually specifically remember it was the show that I did. It was actually your show that you put on that I did, and I went and talked to the judges afterwards, and they told me that I wasn't the shape. I was perfectly lean. I had so many people tell me after the show, like, you should have won, you should have won. You were, right there, and the judges were like, well, your body just doesn't fit. You need to do wellness. But at the time, wellness still did not exist. It was coming out the following year. So I kind of got judged based off of being in wellness without that even ever being an actual category. And that for me was so frustrating because I couldn't understand, because I couldn't get the look that they were wanting and still be in the bikini category, yet the new category hadn't came out. So I was in like this kind of like limbo in between. And it was just extremely frustrating for me.
And then COVID hit.
Yep.
Therefore, I believe wellness came out the year prior to COVID.
I think it came out during COVID, because I remember pulling out of the comp because I didn't feel like I could lift and be 100% going into that prep with doing at-home band workouts. Like I'm an all or nothing kind of a girl, and so I remember starting prep, being in prep, really loving the way I looked, and then having to pull out because COVID hit, and I was like, I can't access the gym.
And a lot of people were in that situation during that year of COVID. So focusing on wellness, we started prepping towards wellness once you're finally able to get back into the gym, get into a prep. And I remember that we decided to do the show that I promoted again, which some people thought was political at some regards, but as your coach, who also was a promoter at the time, I knew that you just need to get on stage. And your confidence was something that uh, probably was lacking at the time coming out of the bikini experience.
Definitely.
However, a lot of us knew that if you just got on stage, you would probably win. And you ended up doing that show quite a bit early compared to your planned show,
Oh yeah.
which I think was probably at the halfway point of your prep.
Yep.
And but you got on stage, you won the overall.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel coming out of that show, and what was your experience going into your first wellness competition?
I think that definitely helped boost my confidence a little bit. I still had a lot of reservations as far as how I looked. I'm just the type of person that it's just never good enough, and what I see in the mirror and what I feel about myself is I'm my own worst critic. I think a lot of women really struggle with that actually, and I think that winning that show helped, although it was a smaller show. So I kept telling myself, well, this is a small show, so of course you're going to do a little bit better. Like, wait until you get into the big leagues, because that's going to be different. And I remember having a little bit of confidence and feeling like, okay, that felt great, but at the same time, kind of really still doubting myself, because I'm like, well, this is such a small show, it's such a small win. Like, there's bigger fish to fry.
And then he did the Oregon show,
Yeah.
which was, I believe, 6 weeks. I don't remember the exact time from
Yeah, it was like 6 or 7 weeks in between the two.
and he won that show.
Mm-hmm.
Did your confidence build after that one?
That one was a lot better, just because it was a slightly bigger show. So it did help. I had never won overalls before. Like I said, I couldn't get past fourth place. So to go from, just placing in the top 5 barely to then taking 2 overalls definitely helped my confidence, and kind of helped me with like my stage presence, getting my jitters out, things like that. But going into nationals was still a very, very big beast to me that I was terrified of.
That was your first national show.
Very first.
You had a pretty big class, and you ended up placing 3rd, which meant for nationals, those who compete, the top 2 in open nationals get their pro card for IFBB. You placed 3rd, so you missed it by 1 spot, which was bittersweet because here was your first nationals. You placed 3rd out of a big class, but you also missed your pro card by 1 spot. So take us through what that experience was.
In the moment, I was devastated, to say the least. I, got off stage and I, of course, cried because it was a little devastating. At the same time, going into it, all I could think of was like, just place top 5. Like, if you could place top 5, that like just shows that you belong there. I remember showing up, seeing all the girls, and I was like, I'm screwed. Like, this is not gonna go well for me. These women look amazing. I'm a nobody. This is not gonna be good. And then to get first call outs, and then on top of that to place 3rd, I was in shock, to say the least. But then again, that competitiveness of me, of like being so close but then not quite getting it, it was devastating. But then also kind of, it really like proved to me like, hey, you've got a little bit more than you think you got. Like, you're capable more than you think you are. And that was kind of a big turning point for me, I think.
And for your height, you end up in that average height class.
Ugh,
Therefore, the girl who won your class ended up winning the overall for nationals.
She did.
Therefore, it was one of those situations where we felt you can't really change your height in this sport. But if you were in the class below you or the class above you, probably would have won your class. But being in that class that you were in, the top 2 were stacked,
Yeah.
and have gone on to compete as IFBB pros.
Yeah.
Therefore, you really were that next in line. But we went back into off season. I was under your prep for that season.
Yep.
How was your motivation going into the next prep?
Oh,
now that you were so close.
I was coming in with a vengeance. I was ready to do it and do anything it took to get there. I think that really actually helped me through my prep, because I feel like the second prep going into that one was also the first prep was a really long one, and then the second prep, because we kind of pushed out shows and did a show and then another 6 weeks a show and then another 6 weeks a show. And typically when I go into those when I get about 8 weeks out from a show, like, I cut down to, I give myself nothing. Like, I give myself nothing, no mustard, no nothing. Like, it's just salt and the food that I eat, and I'm on my cardio and I'm on my game. And kind of staying in that deficit for as long as I did for each show, 6 weeks out, really, really took a toll on me. Mentally, physically, emotionally, all of it. but I just was so like hyper focused on getting that pro card because I knew that like it was within my grasp. So I was like, okay, you can make it through this, and I just had that goal in front of me of like, you are capable, look how close you came. If you just dig a little bit deeper, you can do it.
Yeah, I remember for that prep you actually got a step mill in your garage.
I did.
And so you were able to get up in the morning
And do
morning.
my fasted 35 minutes of cardio, and my hot, it was middle of summer, I was drenched in sweat, doing my steps every morning, and then sometimes at night.
You're right. You had both preps were long preps. The approach that we took was each prep basically was a progression into the next 6 weeks. And when you do that, that means you're not going in 100% into to the first show at least.
Right.
When you did the first show, you knew you weren't going in 100%,
Right.
but you still won it.
And I was super worried about that.
You were, and therefore another confidence boost. And then there was some strategy in play as far as choosing which show to go after, as far as to give you an opportunity to win your pro card. Instead of going back to the NPC Nationals direction, we chose to go the NPC Worldwide direction and use the show in Vancouver. And the difference between these two shows, again, was the Nationals, you had to place top two, but you have larger classes. And the NPC Worldwide in Vancouver, you had to win your class and then win the overall.
Right.
Which we did a show about 3 weeks out from that show where you're probably about 95%, which also gave you the opportunity to get on stage in front of similar judges that might be in Vancouver. And there was some strategy in play there as far as choosing that show in Washington for that one. Now you go into Vancouver, you basically blow the field away. It was a no question. And
I'm glad you think so. I was questioning the whole time.
It was pretty obvious that you were going to win that show after pre-judging. How did that feel to win your pro card?
That was a very surreal moment, and I actually, it makes me emotional thinking about it. I think because I was so focused on the goal the whole time, I didn't really get a chance to like take in what had just happened. I had been, competing for 8 years or so, working, not necessarily always working towards that goal because I didn't even know it was something I was capable of. But yeah, I just remember like not really fully taking it in. Like I didn't really fully understand what happened, and I actually got home, and my boyfriend kind of like stood me in front of my pro card, and he was like, I don't feel like you fully have taken in what you just accomplished, Shelby. You need to stand here and just like think about everything that you've done to get to this point and take it in. And I just like broke down and cried and bawled, and I was like, yes, thank you. Like I needed that. I needed to like just fully take it in. And even still, like I don't feel, it's funny because I go to the gym, people are like, oh, you're a pro, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess. Like it's not, I don't know, I don't always feel like that, like, oh, this like elite high athlete. I'm just like that was something that I did accomplish and it's so cool, but I don't feel any sort of special way about it, I guess.
That's okay. The title is there. You obviously will be a
Right.
pro forever.
Yeah.
And you will, we still haven't got on stage for the first time as a pro, which will be coming within probably the next year or so.
Oh yeah.
And maybe at that point, they'll set in that you are at that next level.
That's scary. That thought is scary.
One of the things that I want to touch on about that Vancouver show, as we'll change directions here and move into a little bit of probably what we can call maybe a political side of the sport, maybe a dark side of the sport of bodybuilding that isn't always talked about at the forefront of anyone discussing bodybuilding. And like I said, you won that show hands down, but something very strange happened at that show, which I really haven't seen before. And that was the girl who got second to you was also from Canada.
Right.
You were doing a Canadian show.
Right.
And they brought her back out on stage randomly during another division because Wellness was already off stage and done. And they randomly brought her back out stage. And if I remember correctly, they announced, we just got a call from the NPC and they're going to award another pro card for this show, and they gave it to the second place runner-up girl.
Right.
That seemed really odd, to say the least, as far as what is going on. It almost felt like they had an agenda for someone specifically to walk away with a pro card, but you came in so ready to win that they just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, there's definitely I feel like everybody talks about that there is like a political side to the NPC, to bodybuilding, to all of that, and I think sometimes like you see that come into play where people just before the competition even begins, they kind of have an idea of who's out there, who's came in, and who they kind of assume is going to win that show, and then you've got, you know, people that kind of jump in that nobody really knows, nobody's really heard of, and they kind of, you know, you can't deny it. The crowd or whoever will be there will kind of be in an uproar of like, how did that go that direction? So they were forced to no other way than to award a second one. I always just assumed that like maybe she did a master's and they handed out some type of master's award because she was a little bit older than I was.
I don't think that was
But
the
I have
case.
no idea what that was about. That was very, very strange. And I feel like there's a lot of politics that kind of come into play sometimes with this sport. And you hear a lot of people talk about it. And it's just kind of like this like hush-hush sometimes. Even on the regional level, I feel like sometimes that can kind of come into play.
Yeah, it seems strange because they almost gave her more acknowledgement that she got a pro card versus you, actually, even though you were the first place winner of that show. But the girl, I believe, had been competing for multiple years at that show. Therefore, it seemed like there might have been something going on behind the scenes as far as trying to get one of their own. Again, it's a
Like she
different
paid her
country.
dues.
Exactly. So what that leads me into is to go another direction within the sport of bodybuilding, especially the women's sport. Is, do you feel like there is an issue with misogyny in bodybuilding?
I mean, definitely. Like there's a high standard that we as women kind of have to have when we are stepping on stage. I feel like for men it's easy. They just throw on a random pair of trunks and throw on a tan, and that's about the gist of it. And they jump on stage and they're fine and they're good to go. And for us, it's your hair has to be perfect. Your makeup has to look a certain way. Your tan has to look a certain way. Your suit has to be a certain color. It has to match your skin tone. Like, nobody's looking at a guy in pink trunks saying, oh, well, that doesn't match your skin tone. But if you wear the wrong color of suit, you're doomed. And they will let you know about it. They will tell you, like, your suit did not match. Your makeup looks bad. I've had clients that I've helped with certain things where they came back and they're like, her makeup was horrible, and that's why she didn't place well. I'm like, well, but we're judging her body. We're judging what she looks like in her body and stuff. And I get that there's like this full package look that kind of comes into play when you're doing bodybuilding shows. But I mean, like, if that body is undeniable, who cares if her eyeliner's a little off? Like, really?
Exactly. And when you look at the men's side, nobody is judging above the neck on the men's side of the sport. And I came across a recent dissertation that was published earlier this year. And what a dissertation is, it's for someone who is completing a PhD program to earn their doctorate. And this individual did her dissertation on gender inequality in the women's sport of bodybuilding. And the title of this dissertation was The Weight of Leaving, Gender, Identity Shifts, and Health Challenges in the Post-Competition Lives of Women Bodybuilders. And what she did was she interviewed 15 female competitors who had competed across various divisions and their perspectives of the sport. And one of the themes that came out of this was the idea of misogyny. Therefore, when we look at misogyny in the eyes of the judges, and I have also been an NPC judge myself for a few years, and I can remember sitting next to one particular judge at a show where basically he was just rating competitors like it was a hot or not contest.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't judge a lot of shows. I judged primarily in one region. And I can imagine if I'm seeing this at the local level, I can only imagine how many local level bodybuilding shows are having the same issue of female competitors being judged on everything but their physique, as long as their physique is decent enough. What do you think about that as far as male judges and how they perceive female competitors?
I definitely think that, like, just like in general and everything, you know, there's definitely a different standard for women when it comes to beauty and the way that you look and the way that you are perceived by other people. And I have told people, like, sometimes, you know, judges, they'll go off of even your hair color, like, oh, they like blondes more, therefore they're gonna go for, you know, you could have two girls that have similar bodies, but one judge is gonna go for the blonde versus the brunette just out of preference, and that happens all the time. And I find it common with not just the male judges but the female judges too. Like, I've had female judges come up to me and talk to me about, you know, the beauty aspect and like your hair and your makeup and your this and your that, and it's just, it can get very, very frustrating because you're not judged based off of the work that you put in that shows on your body, but you're judged based off of what you look like as an overall appearance. And I've gone into shows where I personally have been, you know, placed above or below somebody based off of what I feel like is similar bodies, but then, you know, somebody might be a little bit prettier, a little bit more put together. Their hair might look a certain way, or somebody might have shorter hair and they just don't place as well.
And it was interesting in this dissertation, one of the things that they talked about was women who were defiant within the sport of competing, and that led to bikini competitors who did cut their hair short, but didn't necessarily place as well because they had a shorter haircut versus the typical extensions that you see on most
long,
females.
draping down the back, yeah. And it's sad because you kind of have to play the game when you're doing it yourself. Like, you have to put the extensions in and have it cascading down your back a lot of the times because there's a standard of look that they're going for that really has nothing to do with bodybuilding. But if you don't play the game, you don't win. You don't place as well as everybody else. And it can be very, very frustrating for a lot of people that I know. They're like, I like my short hair, or somebody that has curly hair. Like, I naturally have very, very curly hair, and I would never wear it on stage because girls, a lot of the times with that natural curly hair, they don't place the same.
And so you have curly hair. I mean, how long does it take you to get your hair ready to get on stage then?
Typically about 2 hours or so to get my hair blown out, straightened, and
is that all
properly.
done the day of the show, or are you
I
talking maybe
typically
a
do
day
it the
before?
night before because I'm sweating and I can't sweat through that tan, so I've got to get the hair done before I even get the tan on because it is work.
That makes sense. To go back to the misogyny side, it's going to look different between male and female judges because female judges a lot of times are just as guilty as male judges in the misogyny aspect, but in different ways. But when we talk about misogyny through the lens of the male judges, really what that means is male judges objectifying women's bodies in relation to their beauty, their sex appeal. Again, the reference of a judge using the hot or not scale. That is when we're referring to the objectification of women's bodies. Now, when we talk about internal misogyny, what that looks like is when we have female judges who are judging female bodies at a different standard than what they would judge male bodies. So we want to make that clear that this is what the female judges aspect looks like when it comes to that internal misogyny side of it. And that would be judging you on your hair, your tan, all the variables that you just mentioned. Therefore, what do you think bodybuilding can do to try to limit this?
I mean, what do I think? I don't know if I necessarily know the right answer to like how to fix it because, you know, it's all personal people that are in it that are making those judgment calls. But
And you also, I mean, this is also a deeply rooted societal issue as well.
yeah,
So it's not
I mean,
just a
it's
bodybuilding
not just
issue.
bodybuilding. It's everywhere, and like, you know, even going to the gym and stuff like that. Like, if you don't look a certain way, you don't feel good because everybody in there is to the nines and full face of makeup and everything, and that's hard. That's a struggle. I personally struggle with it a lot. I actually just the other day went to the gym without a stitch of makeup on, and I was proud of myself for that. And that should not be something that I was proud of myself for, but I literally was like, I told my friend about it. I'm like, I'm so proud of myself for not wearing any makeup or anything to the gym. And in bodybuilding, it's kind of the same thing. Like on the stage and stuff, like there's such like this high standard of this makeup, this hair, this look that you're supposed to have. And honestly, I feel like I'm more judged by women by it than I am men.
So it is more of a
Oh,
internal misogyny issue.
Definitely, definitely.
When you talk about, so let's talk about that a little bit. When you said you went to the gym without makeup, what
Yeah.
led to that?
A lot of self-work and like bodybuilding in general kind of bringing that on me of like always trying to strive for perfection and always trying to look a certain way, feel a certain way, and get approval from the outside, which is what bodybuilding is. You're seeking approval from a panel of strangers who have never, a lot of them, you know, have never lifted a weight in their life, and they don't have the perfect body yet. They're sitting there judging me on my body and how I look and how my hair is and my makeup is, and they're not put together themselves, and I'm seeking that approval from them, and that's really hard, and that's something that, especially with having a younger daughter that's 13, almost 14, like she's starting to kind of talk about her body and talk about health, and I'm trying to gear it towards health, and she's bringing herself down, and I think a lot of that she might have heard from me, which is bad on me. So I have been trying to shift that and really try to focus on, you know, the natural beauty and what healthy looks like, and not just what is pretty or acceptable in society. And so wearing less makeup, being more comfortable just in my own skin in general is something that I have really, really worked on recently.
That's great. And you touched on a great point there where I've been doing this for a very long time as far as working with competitors and female clients in general. A lot of times I hear female clients come in initially saying they want to set an example for their daughters. They want to use this sport to show them what being strong is, what being healthy is. However, we run into this crossroads of the sport can do a lot of damage in the other direction as far as causing disordered eating,
Yep.
as far as creating increased body image issues, as far as competitors, once they get on stage, all of a sudden they see their best look ever, and then a month later they can't maintain that look, and now all of a sudden, even though that look a month later is great, it's better, probably better than what they have looked like in the past, but now all of a sudden that look isn't good enough anymore.
Oh, it's never good enough. It's this constant reaching for more and more and more that this sport kind of has you. And I tell people this all the time, like, once you become fit, it's almost worse than not being fit, because you get to this like Shelby back then would have killed for the body that Shelby has now. But for some reason, I still constantly have to battle myself on, that's not good enough. You need a bigger glute. You need a bigger this. You need more of that. And that is like a struggle that I constantly have. Whereas if I look back where I originally started and what I've looked like before, like I should be so incredibly proud of where I am now. But you're so in it, and you're surrounded by everybody around you that has like these ideal bodies, and you look at somebody else and you're like, oh, I want her legs, I want her butt, I want her arms. And then they're looking at you thinking the same thing, but you don't see it in the mirror. And so it's like this really hard, like constantly striving for more, for better, for different. And it plays really big mind games on you. And especially when you step on stage and you are literally there to compare your body to somebody else's. That is not healthy. It is not healthy. In any way you look at it, it is not healthy.
I agree with you. And I would say for me, being removed from the sport as a competitor myself now for almost 5 years, that has probably come to my forefront of acknowledgement more than ever. Because when you are in the middle of it, it's hard to see it. And I think a lot of people fall victim to that, where they don't realize how far they've gone in that direction. And it's hard to pull yourself back when you're in the middle of it. So obviously you have found some awareness around it. What have you done that has helped you become more aware of that? Is it just that your daughter's getting older, or what is it?
I think it is. I think she plays a very, very big role in me seeing myself differently and speaking about myself differently. She's constantly like, is this healthy? Is this healthy? And we've worked on the verbiage of like healthy versus like diet and things like that. And explaining to her that there is a balance to both. Like, you can still eat your ice cream and have your treats and do your things, and that's okay to have those. And it's just more consistency, and still having like your normal stuff and feeling okay to have those without like shaming yourself or making yourself feel bad for having that. So I've learned a lot of, throughout the years, I've learned what balance really looks like. And I think bodybuilding has helped me learn that balance, you know, cheat days and stuff like that, and how that feels eating all of those good foods, and like how it kind of brings up my mental, you know, that mental aspect of it kind of makes me feel good. Like getting to eat and stuff, and then the next day kind of being like, okay, this will come off. Like, this isn't a permanent thing for me. It's okay to cheat. It's okay to have the ice cream. And then the next day, go back into the gym and pretend like it didn't even exist.
Do you feel like that has progressed as the more you've competed and
Yeah,
the more, let's
sure.
say, post-show transitions you have gone through?
For sure. I think it was over time. I've learned a lot of those lessons, because back in the day, I used to binge eat and things like that, and that was really, really hard. Coming out of that and not feeling guilty, and now I'm like, it is what it is, and I ate and I still look good, so it's fine.
Well, that's exactly where you want to be at. Can you make sure that's still on? I feel like this. Okay. So let's talk more about the post-show transition phase. What has been, obviously your post-show experience has progressed the more you competed. What was the hardest thing in your first couple shows that you ever did that has, you mentioned now just being, you know, more with the acknowledgement that I'll be okay. But what also has changed between those first couple preps coming out of that prep versus, let's say, now that last prep that you did?
The first couple preps, I feel like I actually came out of them better. Like, I didn't fully have a whole lot of goals set, as far as like I was just gonna get on stage and compete, and like bodybuilding was just kind of like this fun little hobby, and I didn't take anything too seriously. So coming out of prep, the first two shows, I didn't put a whole lot of weight in gaining back weight, and then I gained a lot of weight and came to you, and then I was like, this is a problem. But then coming out of this last show, I actually really struggled. I remember making my prep food, my reverse diet food, coming out of this last one, and I was just bawling my eyes out and really struggling. And for me, it wasn't about the food, it was about feeling normal. Because with my kids and stuff, like when you're going through prep and you're doing such a long prep, I think that prep was like at least a half a year.
Both your preps,
yeah.
The last two preps were a half
One
year.
was a year, and then the other
Yeah,
one was like a half
yeah.
a year. And my kids are like, do you want to fight? Do you want this? Do you want that? And they want to eat with me. They want to feel normal with me. I want to feel normal with them. I want to have the same energy that they have when we go and do things, because I try not to let it, like my prep, affect their day-to-day life and the things that we do as a family and going out and outings and stuff. Even though they affect me, I try not to let them affect them. And coming out of this prep, like I just kept telling myself, like a little bit further, like in prep, I kept telling myself, like, in this many weeks you can eat and be normal, and this many weeks you can eat and be normal. And then I kind of got out of the prep, and then it was like, oh, here's your reverse diet, and it just was like, this isn't normal. This doesn't feel normal. I am not okay. And I really struggled with that. And I remember texting you and messaging you about that, and you were so gracious, and you were just like, just eat what you feel. Like, it's okay. You're gonna be okay. Your body's gonna bounce back. And it did, and that helped a ton. And I think that also was probably a big pivotal moment for me, as far as like food and my relationship to it and stuff goes, of like, your body is amazing, and it can fluctuate and it can bounce back, and like it's just a matter of just what you're putting into it. It'll adjust. And if I come out of prep and I gain a little bit of weight, like if I really wanted to, I could get that off by just dieting back down again and taking some of that food away.
And I think what's important to acknowledge here is that when you come out of prep, everybody hears about reverse dieting. And the issue with reverse dieting is there's one variable that there is not a single reverse diet out there that can come up with a solution to this, and that is the element of the dopamine downregulating. And what I mean by that is when you had a very concrete goal, like that, your goal was to win your pro card, so you're going to do anything that you could to win your pro card. You even talked about cutting out mustard the last part of your prep, which I don't always say you need to cut your
I know
mustard.
you don't. That wasn't a you thing.
You.
That was a me thing. That was a me thing.
But what's allowing you to do that is the element of dopamine, because dopamine is a motivation neurotransmitter that is helping you seek a goal. And a lot of times we think about dopamine as the goal attainment of accomplishing the goal, but really dopamine is helping us seek that goal. Therefore, one of the things I try to talk about a lot is when the show is over, the prep is over, you had the reward, you won your pro card, now there's this massive downregulation of dopamine. Therefore, you're going to look at that food on that reverse diet and say, I want nothing to do with this. Because now that dopamine is not existent towards your food, because that's really what was keeping you accountable to your diet throughout the prep, is that big goal that you had. And I think a lot of times we underestimate that there really isn't a perfect reverse diet solution, and really what it comes down to is trying to understand more about this downregulation of dopamine, trying to figure out how do we recreate some sort of goal that's going to keep us on track somewhat. Now, the next thing that I want to go into, which is another those who know, those who don't know, and that is the reality of the women's sport and men's sport as well. The reality of bodybuilding is that when you go to the national level, when you go to the professional level, there is going to be the side of PEDs. And when it comes to women, what those PEDs look like is basically increasing the androgens in the woman's body. And the difference between men and women when it comes to estrogen and androgens is basically men have a positive androgen to estrogen ratio. And to make this in the simplest terms, women are going to have the opposite. We're going to have a more positive estrogen to androgen ratio. And again, this is the most simplest terms I can put this in, but to make it sound explainable. But basically, when we start competing and we start going to that next level, the only way, and I'm going to say this, the only way that we can attain that really hard, shredded, like that crazy glue look is to increase androgens.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of women out there who, for one, they wouldn't understand this because they're not that deeply involved with the sport, but they're also following women on social media who are doing this. What are your thoughts about using the androgens as far as knowing that you have to do it in order to get to the level you want to be at, versus is it even possible to do it without it?
National level, like NPC national level, I feel like there's not a soul out there that doesn't. I mean, if there are, they are a rare unicorn. So I feel like in order to reach your goals at the level that we're competing at, it's a necessity. It also like really helps you get through your prep. I feel like too, like there's a lot of it that like helps you through that process and stay on that like positive side of things. Because I've done preps without any of it, and it was definitely a different experience for sure. And then the end result was completely different.
Yeah, it's going to be completely different. I mean, there's a reason why it's one of those things where, unfortunately, as a female competitor, you pretty much have to go down that road. When we talk again, and what I want to touch on with this is going back to that post-show transition, because there's a lot of people out there talking about what women use or what they shouldn't use. And I will say that we have done blood work, we have done lab work, we have tried to maximize your physique with the least amount possible. And it's not something you do all year round.
No, I am very, very on the modest side, I would say, with things. For me, and I've talked to you about this many a times, like my femininity is extremely important to me, and keeping that. And I think that a lot of people out there, and I've seen it in the gym, and it's so sad of these young 19-year-olds that don't know what they're doing, and people are just passing them stuff, and they're just taking all kinds of things, and their voices are deepening, and they're wrecking their bodies, and they haven't even had babies yet. And I'm like, but wait, don't you want children? Like, don't you want these things? And they are uneducated in it. And I just wish there was a little bit more of like that education out there of like what it can do, what a modest amount looks like, and having like more of like that guidance and like openness about it.
And one of the things another reason you are taking a year off from even going back into a prep for a pro show is to give your body a break.
Right.
And I think that is underestimated with a lot of competitors out there, especially as you reference even younger competitors, is that they always want to be using something where they're competing every year. And if you want to have a chance to compete in bodybuilding and still maintain your femininity, to maintain your health, to have the least amount of negative side effects possible, you can't do this all every year.
One after another, yeah. And I feel like you can't grow that way either. Like there's no real room to grow because you're not taking that time to grow that muscle before you're cutting back down, and you can't grow a muscle while you're cutting.
That's
Makes
true.
no sense.
And when we look at, again, going back to that androgen to estrogen ratio, again, we are basically flipping that androgen to estrogen ratio in a female's body that allows her to achieve that look that we're going after. Now, when we talk about post-show transition, one of the things that stands out to me also as far as when we look at why the early preps may not have been as difficult as far as transitioning out of is also not only are you having this dopamine downregulation, but you're also flipping your androgen to estrogen ratio back the other direction.
Right.
So for men, all they are doing is increasing their androgens higher than what they already naturally are. But when they come back down, they're still in a positive androgen to estrogen ratio. So they are not going to get the same emotional swing that potentially a female competitor would get.
Yeah.
What's your experience with going through that phase of where you've been high androgens to compete, and you also now are transitioning out of prep, and your body is also reverting back to the other ratio where now your estrogen is going to try to come back up as your androgens decrease? What does that feel like?
It's hard. It's emotional. I feel like I'm a lot more emotional and a lot more like sensitive to a lot of things. I'm a lot more hyper aware of like my body because I feel like it definitely even shifts the way that I look, the way that I feel. And like I said, like I was balling, making my food, which is not a normal thing for me. I'm normally not that type of person, but like I really, really struggle coming out of it and waiting for my hormones to like balance back, for my period to come back, for all of these different things to kind of like even out. And it's rough mentally, and everybody around me probably suffers too from it a little bit, which is not very fair. And bless my family and everybody around me that kind of puts up with that. But it's hard, and I don't think a lot of people take that into account, and they just kind of chalk it up to like, oh, you know, it's kind of like this normal feeling of, you know, being back on the diet or food and this and that. And I do notice a big difference in between on and off of it.
I wouldn't see how you wouldn't. And I think that's something that's overlooked often, especially with coaches who are recommending female clients to use these things, but not necessarily ever talking about what that is doing in your body as far as how your emotions, how your thoughts are going to be different as far as these hormones being drastically changing in your body more than a male bodybuilder would be going through.
Which is what I can kind of really appreciate about you, is that you understand the psyche behind it, and you have a lot of grace for us when we come out of that, when we're complaining and we're kind of being whiny and like, I'm not okay and stuff like that. And I've heard of a lot of other coaches that are just like, well, they just need to buck up and stuff. And I'm like, but you don't understand, because you're not a female and you don't know what it's like for your body on a weekly basis to your hormones to fluctuate and to change, and for it to feel those ups and those downs constantly. And then that's kind of heightened when you're coming down off of those. It's like an even more intense version of that as your body tries to like balance itself out. You know, I'm getting blood work done and trying to make sure that everything's like stable and normal, and I can appreciate, and I always talk about the grace that you have when it comes to coming out of prep with us mentally, because for me, like, that's so important. The mental side of it, if I can't get through the mental side of it, my body's not going to respond properly.
Exactly. And let's touch on this real quick. When you mentioned losing your menstrual cycle, how far out from your contest do you start to lose it?
I lose mine pretty quickly. I'd say about halfway through a prep, mine's gone.
And then how long does it take for you to regain your normal cycle?
Typically at least a month to maybe a month and a half before mine comes back. I've heard of a lot of women that lose it like almost immediately and then have the hardest time and months before they'll get it back. So it's something that you kind of have to like really kind of take into account as far as like when using these things, of like how it's going to affect your body and what it's going to do to you. And if you haven't had children yet, luckily I have, and I'm done, but like that's not a factor for me. But for some people, that should be a factor, and should be something that you should consider when going into it.
I mean, so it sounds like, I mean, you're going at least 6 months probably throughout this whole process of not having a cycle,
Yeah.
which for any female body, that's going to be an issue just in general,
Right.
as far as maintaining fertility. and the potential issues that that can cause. So I would recommend that if anybody is struggling with this and they do find themselves in that 6-8 month frame and they're done competing and they still haven't had a cycle and it's been several months post-show, then that's probably when you need to consult your doctor.
Big red flag.
And get your hormones checked, talk to your doctor, figure out what you need to do to make sure that you're on the right track of regaining your normal menstrual function. Let's finish up going into what's going on in the sport of bodybuilding as far as the new division. I think one of the things that's happening is, and I can speak from a former contest promoter standpoint, as I promoted shows for about 6 years, is the sport of bodybuilding is fading. The numbers are dying, and this morning the USA's just happened, and this morning I went through and looked at the competitor field in the bikini division this year versus 10 years ago. And in 2025, there were 157 total competitors in the USA's. Do you have an idea how many there might have been in 2015, 10 years ago?
I mean, I have no idea. I do know that the shows and the classes back then, even when I was competing at a regional level, were much, much bigger than they are now.
They were 247 competitors in 2015 were on stage in the bikini division, with Class D having 56 competitors in it. And I remember being at that show, and they couldn't even fit every person on stage. And that's how big this division was 10 years ago, and it really has faded over the years. And even in the figure division, I was surprised where they only had 38 competitors total this is the open women's figure division in the US, in bodybuilding, the USA's. In 2015, they had 129. So they've lost almost 100 competitors in 10 years as far as the turnout. So what happens when this what happens here is that promoters are looking for ways to recoup money. And again, being a former promoter myself, one of the reasons I got out of it was I was seeing these trends going down. And the last show I promoted, I broke even financially on, and that was enough for me to say, you know what, I'm done. This isn't my main gig. I don't need to be losing money on a hobby. So I went ahead and got out of the promoting world. But this new division called Fit Body, or Fit Model, I believe is what it's called, is an attempt to basically go back to the original bikini look.
Right.
And I think that that's actually a good thing. I think that when we talk about women, I think one of the reasons women don't compete at the local level even anymore is because they see these looks on social media that are insane looks, but it's almost that they are so good that they just doubt that they can even do that. So they just don't even try.
I mean, I'm one of them sometimes.
And the other issue that has been going on in the younger generations is this idea of the body positive movement. And that's basically where younger generations of women are focusing on embracing and accepting and normalizing all bodies without judgment, which in a bodybuilding show where the main component of the sport is judging your physique, what do you think is going to happen with the future of bodybuilding? Do you think this new division is going to bring women back to what it was 10 years ago? Or are we learning a little bit that maybe the sport isn't the healthiest thing to do for a lot of people, and so the average person may no longer compete in the sport peaked 10 years ago?
I think that what's happening also, it kind of has a big part in it, is like the standard. So like when they start a new division, it has a certain look and a certain standard, and then somehow we get so far away from that, and it's just harder, more muscle, more this, and it almost becomes unattainable. Or to some people, it also becomes like, I don't want to look like that. I don't want to be that muscular, especially coming from like a female standpoint and somebody that does like to keep her femininity. Like I don't want to look like that. And if it's looking like a female versus winning a show, I'm gonna go with looking like a female. So I think part of it, I think that the new fit model thing kind of brings back the bikini, and I hope that that standard stays. But what tends to happen is that they bring that in, and then it just gets harder and harder and harder and harder, and then they get further away, and then they bring in a new category and start the process all over again instead of just judging it for what it should be and stop rewarding the women that don't belong in that category for a harder look, but rewarding the ones that fit that standard of what they're setting. And I've noticed it in wellness even now. Like I'm looking at you look at wellness when it very first started and who was winning the shows and what that looked like. I was like, yes, I want to look like that. And I'm seeing the Olympia and the Arnold and the women that are winning wellness now, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to look like that. They're looking like bodybuilders. Their legs are bigger than the men's. I'm all for a big leg and all of that. I love that because that's my natural physique. But at the same time, let's keep it a little bit more to the original of what we were going for to begin with. And I think that's why they're losing money. It's just this unattainable, and it's just more instead of awarding what the standard is actually set at and where it should be.
I agree with you with that. And having been around in the sport when the bikini division started, I can tell you that this fit model division is exactly the same as the original bikini.
Yeah, and that's how I started. When I first started, that was the look that we had. Even the same pose with the leg kicked out, that was the pose that we did.
Identical.
And that body is what I originally started with, and it just got harder and harder and harder as far as the muscle and the leanness and stuff. And now it's like women are looking at it like, I don't think I want to look like that.
So as we wrap up here, what is your goal with this sport? What do you want to get out of it as you continue to compete in the future?
I definitely want to try to hit the pro stage and just kind of see what I'm capable of, where I kind of sit in that. And I'm not one to just I'm so competitive. I'm not one to be like, I'm just going to do a show just to do a show. That'll never be me. If I'm going to do a show, I'm going to do a show. And I'm going to strive to kind of do my best at it. Of course, still having a realistic expectation of I'm starting from the bottom again. So there's that. And like I said, the wellness look right now is a little intimidating as far as what's hitting the Olympia stage. I'd love to get to the Olympia. I'm hoping that they'll rein it all back, but you never really know what's going to happen. But yeah, I want to compete. I want to do it again. I don't know if I'll do it forever. I'm getting a little older, and my kids are getting older, and so my focuses are starting to kind of shift into their sports and what their interests are and stuff like that. But lifting and the bodybuilding world, I kind of will always have a little special place for me, and I don't think I'll ever get away from the gym and the general sport. May not be on stage, but I'll definitely always have some kind of.
Well, we'll see if we can get you there to the Olympia one day.
Yes.
Now, do you have? Are you sponsored by anybody? Do you want to recognize your sponsors?
I'm not necessarily sponsored by anybody. You have to be really active on social media for that stuff, and I have different priorities.
Okay, well, nothing wrong with that. Well, I'd like to thank you for coming in and doing this episode with me, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Do you have any final words you want to say?
No.
All right. Well, I just want to end by saying fitness is a journey, and finding purpose in that journey is essential to long-term success in weight loss and physique management. Always strive to use fitness to learn more about yourself and to further your self-growth. Thanks for listening.